Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for the week of November 23rd through November the 29th. Hope that you're all doing well out there this week. This week, we're going to be seeing a few contacts with Mercury to the outer planets. There's going to be a trine to Neptune early in the week, a sextile to Pluto later in the week, and then Mercury is going to make a sextile to Jupiter at the end of the week. We're also going to see Venus opposing Uranus this week and Neptune stationing direct. So, those are kind of the highlights that we have for the week. We are also building up to a full moon lunar eclipse on Monday, November the 30th. So, it's kind of a lead up week to that full moon eclipse and the big changes that are going to be taking place at that lunation. So, let's dive right into it and check out our planetary condition report. Hope that you're all doing well, getting ready for hopefully a socially distanced Thanksgiving. Um, One of my favorite holidays, and it is definitely a bummer that we're not all able to get together with our loved ones. But I would highly encourage everyone, if you haven't made plans to do so, but um, COVID's getting pretty bad out there. So I hope that the ability to delay some gratification this year and kind of take one for the team is I hope we're able to do that for the sake of our loved ones and for the sake of the longevity of the people that we care about and for our community members. So we're going to be staying home this year and doing maybe just some Zoom calls on Thanksgiving, and it is definitely not ideal, but that's the circumstances and the hand that we've been dealt this year with our situation. So um, hope that everyone can follow suit and do the same and really pare down their get-togethers this year. It's 2020. That's kind of par for the course. So we'll get through this. This too shall pass, and there will be family gatherings in the future. All right, so let's talk about these planetary configurations and see if we can make some sense of it. All right, the sun this week is going to be moving from 1 degree Sagittarius to roughly 8 degrees Sagittarius, where it will be the triplicity ruler during the day. It is moving fast in motion, and it'll be in the terms of Jupiter from 0 to 12 degrees. One of the other kind of important things that we have going on this week that may not be apparent right away when you look at a chart, but we have this condition called ANTISCIA happening between the Sun and Saturn on the 23rd, which is Monday, and then the Sun and Jupiter on the 26th, which is Thanksgiving. So ANTISCIA is kind of this like shadow quality to the planets, like a mirror image reflected across the solstice axes. So in this case, we have the winter solstice happening at 0 degrees Capricorn, and we have the sun in one portion of Sagittarius, and Jupiter and Saturn in the later portion of Capricorn. And one of the concepts with this is an ANTISCIA point is like a shadow. So it is a place of equal light on either side of the solstice. And we'll get into that in a little bit more depth as we get into the daily report, but that is something to keep in mind with our sun. We're going to have kind of like almost like a secret conjunction between the sun and Jupiter and the sun and Saturn. So the only other aspect that the sun is making this week is a trine to Mars in Aries, a newly direct Mars in Aries as of the last week or so. Its host will be Jupiter in Capricorn, which it is an aversion with, but we do have that sort of ANTISCIA relationship. There were a few different types of relationships that planets had with one another that weren't just based on rulership. One of those was ANTISCIA. We had that, and that was also called seeing or beholding. And there was another type of experience called um, commanding or obeying, which were basically based on mirror images on either side of the equinox. And those were kind of like echoes of one another. And these are different types of ways of experiencing those very important kind of cross of matter points with the signs. So A couple other things we've talked about on this show is the concept of like and girding, where a planet will rule multiple houses. So, like for example, we have Mars in Aries that is also ruling all of the Scorpio planets as well, because Mars rules both Scorpio and Aries. So again, there's just kind of these mitigating factors if a planet doesn't have a natural aspect or does not see a planet from a particular domicile. There's kind of these other factors involved. So the sun is having some challenges by being in aversion to its host and having its host being in its fall or its depression. So while we might want to move forward with some of our Sagittarian plans or our Sagittarian goals, it may be a little bit difficult to do so because Jupiter is in a debilitated state. And we really have to consider the ramifications of what we are moving towards as well, because, generally Jupiter is about connecting ourselves to a belief system that may be informed by our higher self. But when it's in Capricorn, it's being provided resources by Saturn. And this may really draw us down to earth and have us have a more practical concern with what we're trying to do on a spiritual level. So that's a challenging type of relationship. So we have this kind of, we're aspiring towards spirituality, but we're being given these like almost mundane resources to do it, and that's a strange position for Jupiter to be in, and one that it's not very comfortable in. So Saturn this week will be in Capricorn, moving from 27 to 28 degrees Capricorn. It will be fast in motion. It's in its own domicile. And of course, it will be in that ANTISCIA relationship with the sun on the 23rd, or Monday. It's in the terms of Mars from 26 to 30 degrees. It will be co-present with Jupiter. It's making an overcoming square to Mars in Aries and sextiling Venus and Mercury in Scorpio. It is, of course, in its own domicile, so it has access to all its own resources. Jupiter this week will be in Capricorn, moving from 24 to 25 degrees Capricorn. It is fast in motion. It will make contact with a fixed star at 24 degrees Capricorn called Pavo. And that was a fixed star in the constellation, the Peacock, or Pavo was the Peacock. And it's a very southern constellation that wasn't really recognized until the 16th century. So it may or may not have significant astrological meaning based on kind of our Hellenistic system, but we can explore it a little bit and see if there might be some meaning that we can draw from that projected ecliptical degree conjunction. Um, Jupiter is, of course, in its fall. It will be in the terms of Saturn from 22 to 26 degrees and co present with Saturn, who is also its host. It is making an overcoming square to Mars in Aries and sextiling Venus and Mercury in Scorpio, just like Saturn would be. So again, Jupiter's not super happy. It's trying to bring some assistance to Mars, even with that square position, but it's not in the greatest shape to do so. So again, we have the benefics this week that are not happy campers. We have Jupiter in its fall and Venus in its exile. So it might be difficult for us to have a revelry and pleasure this week, which really seems to align with the difficult compromises we're going to have to make with a holiday like Thanksgiving, where we generally get together with people and celebrate with abundance and good food and togetherness. And that we might not be able to manifest that this year in the same way. And that may lead to some difficult emotions and some difficult, uh, you know, I don't know, difficult conversations. Um, it's yeah, I don't know. All I can say is that we're all going through this, and hopefully we can come out of it intact. And I think part of that is through that delayed gratification that Saturn and Jupiter is really asking us for at this point. All right, let's talk about Mars. Mars is going to be in the sign of Aries this week, or the temple of Aries. Uh, Moving from 15 to 16 degrees Aries. It is slow in motion, because it just turned direct and it is starting to pick up speed, but it is not fast yet. It's in its own domicile. In the terms of Mercury from 12 to 20 degrees, it is receiving an overcoming square from Saturn and Jupiter in Capricorn and making a trine to the Sun in Sagittarius. So Mars is starting to pick up speed again. We might be starting to have an idea of what we want to do moving forward. We're still being asked to take our time and to have patience due to the overcoming nature of those planets in Capricorn. Um, and we may still feel some frustration about not being able to act under our own power or act under our own, I guess, sovereignty on some level as well. So just be patient with the process. I know it's hard to do, but that is what is being asked of us by the collective right now. Um, let's move forward to Venus. Venus is in Scorpio, moving from 2 to 10 degrees of Scorpio. It is fast in motion. It will be in its exile. So it is in a temple that is most like or ruled by Mars. So that's one distinction that has been kind of made in my studies over the last week or two is, Robert Schmidt compares a sign or a zodiac sign to a temple that is like its host. So Mars is so Scorpio is like Mars, and the resources that it provides a planet, the way that it changes a planet, is Mars-like. So it's kind of like when a planet moves into a sign, it sort of takes on some of the characteristics and some of the nature of that sign. It still has its own agenda, but it's being given these particular types of essences to work with or these particular circumstances to work with. So Venus in Scorpio is being it intends or would like to bring things together that are separated, but it is in a place, it is in a context where separation is kind of the name of the game. And the Mars type of separation that happens in Scorpio is the separation from the spirit from the body, so that the form, the material form, can return back to the earth and spirit can return back to whatever collective it is returning to. So we may be trying to work through some of our relationships and try to harmonize that process of separation, which is awkward. It is an awkward thing for Venus to be in a place that is so concerned with death, with decay, with composting, rather than with beauty, with attraction, and things of that nature. So we can also consider the position of Venus can tell us a little bit about the types of things that we either may attract or be attracted to while it is on its journey. So we may have an attraction to some of the more darker sides of life, some more of the dirty uh, alleyways of this earthly experience. We may be taking a journey to try to find catharsis, which is one of the significations of Venus, where we're expressing deep emotions either through art, through music, through any type of aesthetic ritual. Okay. And we are trying to cleanse these very heavy emotions that we are experiencing. So we may be attracted to the dark arts, I guess you could say, or something that is gothic, or something that is, um, I don't know, think about like wearing dark makeup, or wearing black or red or something of that nature, uh, or you know a skull T-shirt. I don't know. These are cliches, but just scary movies, horror films, right? It is kind of like taking pleasure in some of the uglier sides of life or some of the darker sides of life. And that's something, when we watch a horror film, we may try to find pleasure in things like murder or things like monsters, these horrific things. So that could be one of the ways we're experiencing Venus this week. Now, Venus is going to be making an exact opposition to Uranus on the 27th. So we're going to feel the buildup to that over Thanksgiving as well. So this is a, kind of a wild card for our holiday season, where we're trying to bring harmony, but we might have that harmony shaken up a little bit, which is understandable considering the circumstances. Now, it may also be that we have to be really innovative about the way that we get together with people, maybe through the use of technology. We have to use our idealism to kind of work through some of the challenges that we have, and we have to use the quality of hope that eventually these things will get better. Venus will be in the terms of Mars from 0 to 7 degrees this week, and then it will move into its own terms from 7 to 11 degrees. Now, Venus is also the triplicity ruler of the water signs by day, so it does have some dignity in that case. So it's not completely devoid of dignity this week, Venus. So we may be able to kind of salvage something out of these difficult circumstances, whether it's a phone call, a Zoom call. Maybe we have a much smaller gathering where we are still able to cook and with our immediate family and with our household that we live with. Um, and we can try to find gratitude and joy in that manner. I think that when you're going through this process, a lot of it is the spirit that counts. And yes, some of those traditions that we've gotten used to may have to take a different form this year, but the spirit can remain the same. Expressing gratitude, expressing, this appreciation for the other people in our lives or for the abundance that we have. I think that we can still do that, even if we're just having to stay home with our immediate family and not travel. All right, so Venus is also going to be co present with Mercury this week and sextiling Saturn and Jupiter in Capricorn. Its host will be Mars in Aries. Now, it is in an aversion relationship with its host, but it has one of those Hellenistic mitigating relationship factors called like and girding that I've described as a planet that has sympathy with another planet if it's in another domicile that it hosts. So there is some sort of relationship between Venus and Mars this week. And the same is true for Mercury and Mars. So Mercury will be in Scorpio, moving from 16 to 26 degrees of Scorpio, or actually look 27 here. Let's see. Um, yeah, my degrees are slightly off on my notes, but you get the idea. Uh, it will be moving in through its own terms from 11 to 19 degrees. And then it will become peregrine when it moves into the terms of Jupiter from 19 to 24 degrees and the terms of Saturn from 24 to 30 degrees. It will be moving fast in motion and conjoining a number of fixed stars in late Scorpio this week. It will conjoin the fixed star ZUBEN ESCHAMALI at 19 degrees of Scorpio. On Thanksgiving, it will conjoin the heart of the serpent in the hands of Ophiuchus at 22 Scorpio. That fixed star is called UNUKALHAI. And then at the end of the week, it will conjoin the fixed star Hadar in the constellation Centaurus at 24 Scorpio. Mercury will be making an exact trine to Neptune and on the 23rd, an exact sextile to Pluto on the 27th, and an exact sextile to Jupiter on the 28th. It will be co-present with Venus in Scorpio and sextile Saturn and Jupiter in Capricorn. Its host, of course, is Mars in Aries, just like Venus. So again, in that inversion relationship, also with this like and girding type of mitigating factor. The moon this week will be waxing from the first quarter to the gibbous phase. It is slow. We have a slow moon. It will be peregrine in Pisces and Aries, and then moving into its exaltation in Taurus, where it is also the triplicity ruler of the earth signs by night and has some dignity in the second phase of Taurus. When it moves into Gemini, preparing us for our full moon lunar eclipse, it will be peregrine. So this is a week of building up and kind of getting prepared for these big changes, for these giant chapter markers. These eclipses are very powerful new and full moons that generally always happen near the lunar nodes of the moon. So in this case, the moon will be close to the north node when we get to that full moon on Monday the 30th. And full moon lunar eclipses are culminations. They're kind of endings. They are the fruition of something that's been coming for a very long time. And we've been talking about over this new moon cycle that we were initiating the letting go of something. We had a new moon in the third decan of Scorpio where we were trying to get rid of old habits. We are trying to get rid of old illusions. And we were trying to come to terms with the fact that there were opportunities that may have passed us by that we just have to compost so that we can prepare for a new start. So we're going to be having this full moon lunar eclipse on the 30th that ultimately will be preparing us for a new moon solar eclipse that happens on December the 14th. So that will be a great new beginning in the Sagittarius area of our chart. But first, we have to go through an ending. So eclipses in the Hellenistic and in the Vedic understanding, traditional astrology understanding, were not, uh, they weren't fortuitous events. Being associated with the nodes, especially in Indian astrology or Vedic astrology or Jyotisha, they thought of them as demons, as a great serpent that had a severed head. The north node that was called Rahu, and Rahu was kind of a severed demon head that was trying to steal the elixir of life. And since that was against divine law, one of the gods severed the head, and now that is a hungry ghost, so to speak, that can never be satisfied. There was a great thread on Facebook in the traditional astrologers group about the nature of these nodes. And my understanding from the way that Robert Schmidt has described it, and this is also, I think, it's something to think about. Somebody argued with Schmidt's logic, but, I don't know if anybody has uh, completely the right picture or the full picture on this. But Schmidt compared the North Node to Saturn due to potentially its association with Gemini, or its exaltation in Gemini, which is the 12th house of the Thema Mundi, or the metaphorical natal chart of the cosmos. And that in turn would make K2, or the South Node, associated with the 6th house of the cosmos and Mars. So you can think of like the North Node, this is my understanding, from that perspective, it would be like you are denied something so that you never get satisfied. You are always hungry for something because of the denial of it. Whereas with the South Node, you have a body that's trying to process things. You have Mars where you've been separated and severed from something, and that is allowing you to digest potentially these experiences. You are cut off from material form. You can also think about the nodes of the moon associated with form because of their association with the moon. So the north node is potentially where form is trying to come into being, okay? And the south node, form leaving. That's another way that traditional astrologers thought of the nodes, the north node being one of increase, the south node one of decrease. So if we have a severed body that doesn't have a head, we're trying to digest something. So there could be this digestion energy. And that fits really well, I think, with Mars, where we are being separated from material form. And if you want to think about it in a more holistic manner, that could lead you to some spiritual insights. That is more how I think the Vedic system tries to approach it. That by releasing form, that can help you bring back your focus to your spirituality. Uh, but both of those nodes were thought of as malefic kind of points that were difficult to deal with. Now, as I've described malefic planets in the past, just because something is reducing or bringing us difficulty does not mean that there isn't lessons or things that we can learn from that process. There is an eternal um, cycle of growth and decay, and that both of them are necessary. So if we think about it in that way, that is a way we can deal with these eclipses. What I would recommend, though, is if you've been more into kind of new age spirituality, where if you have like crystals or something and you charge them at the moons, don't charge your crystals at eclipses. Those are you, because what you're doing is you're trying to absorb the energy of these demons. Okay, these the severed head, the hungry ghost of the severed head, or the body that's trying to digest these old things, and that's not recommended. So uh, there are mitigations to these eclipses. um, Caitlin Kopic from Sphere and Sundry has some really great articles on this that I would recommend if you're into ritual practice. A lot of it draws upon the Eastern tradition of propitiating the deity, and in this case, you would either make an offering to Rahu or Ketu, respectively, or to a deity that is kind of the foe of one of those deities. I believe Durga was like the demon slayer. So if at one of these types of eclipses you could pray to Durga to bring you relief from the demon. So those are just some interesting pathways if you're into ritual practice like many practitioners of astrology are. This is something I've been doing a lot of research on lately, and thinking a lot about after really getting into Jeffrey Cornelius's book, The Moment of Astrology. And he's really helping me to understand the divinatory nature of astrology and the divinatory nature of symbol, and the way that we interact with astrology and how much of a ritual practice it was in ancient times. And I think restoring some of that ritual and reverence for these oracular speakings, these oracular omens, is important. And, however you connect with the divine, some people do it through particular ritual practices connected with ancient Greek or ancient Mesopotamian practices. Other people do it through a more orthodox, organized religion fashion. I don't necessarily think that astrology has to be in conflict with other types of spiritual traditions, although it has been suppressed in some of those spiritual traditions. Um, and I think some of that is a mistaken understanding of what astrology is actually trying to tell you. It is, uh, with any spiritual practice, we have multiple layers. And this is something I'm really enjoying learning about in Cornelius's book, is he talks about hermeneutics. And you can see that the root of the word hermeneutics is Hermes. So this is kind of like hermeneutics is how do you translate the divine essence into something understandable in the human mind. And really, you could think of the whole system of astrology as a hermeneutic system. Hermes in ancient Greek mythos was a translator. He was a messenger. He went between worlds. So he may be trying to deliver messages to us of divinity, okay, and helping us understand that divinity as it manifests as a literal event in our life. So we have the level, these hermeneutic levels of the literal event that happens. uh, there was another type of understanding where he talks about allegory. And, one of the most famous allegories is Plato's allegory of the cave, where he talks about um, shadows playing out on a cave wall, or these folks that were chained up in a cave for their entire lives, and they were witnessing shadows from a campfire of the real reality that was going on behind them. One of the uh, one of the figures, or one of the captives, they escape eventually and see the truth for what it is, and then they try to tell the other prisoners about this truth that they've seen, and that all that they're looking at are shadows, but nobody believes them. And this is kind of an allegory for the life of a philosopher, so of the philosophical path, of the love of knowledge and the love of the word, philosophy, philos. I believe there was a Greek root word, I believe it's philos, which is about love. And you have logos, I'm sorry, I'm butchering this because I'm trying to I'm trying to riff a little bit on this, but I'm mixing up logos, which I think is the word, with Sophie, which I think is wisdom. So the love of wisdom would be philosophy. Okay, so we have these figures in ancient mythology and ancient history that are trying to explain uh, divine concepts and tell people how what it means to live a human life. And they sometimes they do it through allegory. So back to my point about hermeneutics, is a lot of times we will experience something literally, an event, and we try to understand it through storytelling or through metaphor or through an extended metaphor. One other level he was talking about was a trope, or which has the root word tropos. And a trope is more of the moral level of a symbol, where we're trying to find meaning in how that symbol can apply to living a good life here on earth. And then the other type of symbol, level of symbol, is the concept of anagogy. So, anagogy is more about being lifted up to the level of divine mystery. Okay, so this is a cool quote that I found when I was doing research. It says the four methods of interpretation point in four different directions: the literal slash historical, backwards to the past; the allegoric, forwards to the future; the tropological, downwards to the moral slash human; and the anagogic, anagogic, upwards to the spiritual slash heavenly. So you can think of like anagogy as the mystery, the something that can't necessarily be explained. It is that divinity in its essence. Whereas sometimes we will see a symbol and we try to find meaning in how we're going to apply it to our life. And I think that can be associated with those tropes. Um, so yeah, an interesting thing that is a path that I am trying to unravel right now, where my studies have led me to this point. And again, very baby stages of that research. So forgive me if I'm not as eloquent on it right now, but I thought that was something to start introducing, because I think it's really important for understanding these symbols, and why we study this. Some of it is so that we can understand what it means to have a human life. Some of it is so that we can get closer to divinity. Some of it is so that we can understand these literal events that we experience and help find human meaning within them. All right. So that's what I've got for my planetary condition report and my little philosophical musings. I will also say that I've been getting a lot of cool books in the mail. I wanted to show you one that I really like. This is a book called Secrets of the Ancient Skies. And it is 2 volumes. I just have the first volume in my hands here. This is by Diana K. Rosenberg. And this is kind of her master work, or her life's work, about fixed stars. And it is very, very in depth. I would say that it definitely rivals the work of Bernadette Brady in its depth, and maybe even expands on it on some level. Um, Unfortunately, Miss Rosenberg passed away from cancer. I believe I was corrected on this. I thought it was only like a year or two ago, but I believe it was in 2012, and after UAC 2012. Um, she wasn't able to finish completely all of her annotations and footnotes and whatnot in her book, but she finished quite a bit of it, and it is really worthwhile. Her family sells it on eBay. There's only one way to find it on eBay. So if you're into fixed stars, it's a very great resource. And I don't know how many of those books are actually left. So if that's something you're interested in, I'd get while the getting is good. It's not the cheapest book set in the world, but um, sometimes you have to invest in things if you want to get the information. So that's what's been going on. That's what's going on with the research. Let's break down our daily forecast. All right, let's move forward to Monday. I'm going to do one chart here. And we see Monday, and I'm going to move forward and put the sun on the ascendant here. All right, on Monday, November the 23rd, the moon begins in Pisces. We are continuing our first quarter phase where we were searching for meaning. We were having some difficulty between our outer actions, which may be represented by the sun in Sagittarius and the goals that we are trying to achieve, and kind of the inner meaning that are infused in those goals. And that was part of what we were dealing with the first quarter moon phase, where we're saying, what the heck are we doing and why are we doing it? And we may get a little bit confused at first because sometimes it really takes quite a journey to make it through the labyrinth or the maze of our inner minds, of our spirits, to be able to find something that really motivates us and is connected to divine will. Sometimes we want to do something, but it may not be connecting to divinity, or it is really not serving our growth as a soul. And sometimes we have to let that go. And those are the questions we really have to ask ourselves right now: is the goals that we're choosing to take action on in the material world, in the outer world, do they reflect who we really are on the inside? And is that going to lead to wisdom? Is that going to lead to realization? Is that going to lead to service? So those are the things that we're going to be starting off our week with. The moon is going to be trining Mercury at 8:37 a.m., making a conjunction to Neptune at 10:31. It will sextile both Pluto and Jupiter towards the evening hours at 23 and 24 degrees of Pisces and Capricorn, respectively. Now we do have a Mercury. We have a Mercury contact with Neptune at 11:39 p.m. at the end of the day, so we're going to feel this throughout Monday. And I would say that this Mercury trine is echoing some of these journeys that we are being asked to go on, these inner journeys that we have to go on before we can really make that new external start. So, we're building towards this full moon in the opposition of Sagittarius and Gemini. So we are trying to think about what exactly is our goal. What do we really believe? How do we manifest the resources and skills necessary to bring it to fruition? And that might be part of the process of this moon cycle that will help us to lead to the actual beginning of our externalized process that probably will begin at the new moon solar eclipse. So I think that this period of time is just about getting clear about what you really want, and not just what you really want, what would really be in best service of your higher self, of the great cosmic being, of the great cosmic unity. How are you furthering this organism that we are all a part of? And I think those are the questions to really ask yourself this week. And Mercury trined Uranus may help facilitate this. This may be an instance where, Ren Butler talks about the power of visualization, intuition, insight, questioning your higher purpose, searching for meaning with your intellect. This could be a time where you really have a fertile imagination, where you're really able to sit and meditate and connect to the divine. Now, you may have a desire to leave it all behind, though, too. This is the thing. Like, Neptune, from my experience, is something where we want to escape. We have kind of this, we may feel a little bit of a lack of energy because we are wanting to transcend this physical form altogether and potentially make a sacrifice to return to substance. Now, Schmidt had an interesting way of thinking about Neptune as homogenized universal substance, like being like a transcendental moon. Remember, moon is something that brought things into forms. It was substance, it was matter. And if we have a transcendental version of that, this may be the divine substance, where we're saying, what are we going to create with? We have Uranus representing the transcendental sun in Schmidt's musings, and Pluto representing the transcendental Mercury in that same philosophical, I don't know, hermeneutic, we could say. Hermeneutic being the rules of interpretation. And like I said, people argue about hermeneutics and have different beliefs on it, but that's the way Schmidt chose to describe those outer planets and their meaning. So we may be longing to return to substance. We may be trying to separate from the idealism to return to this, like, I don't know, bliss, I guess would be another way of thinking about it, where we're not thinking at all. And that could make it difficult with Mercury, because Mercury is all about kind of like thinking, processing, interpreting. And this may lead to some fuzzy details. This may lead to like overlooking uh, some particular conscious thought to try to get more to an intuitive, less rational type of idea. So watch what happens on Monday as far as what bubbles up from like the subconscious, what bubbles up from source, what bubbles up where you can't really explain it, where it comes from, but you may want to follow that thread over the course of Monday, because there some good ideas could come to you that may be divinely inspired. This is the type of oracular thinking that we're trying to do as astrologers. Okay, we're trying to receive an important message from spirit, and sometimes it's confusing at first. Sometimes we don't completely understand it, and we have to kind of, that's why the ritual of like meditating or asking for assistance and interpretation is important. It's why you just didn't sit down and read a chart, or sit down and say like, oh, I'm just going to think my way through this. It was a combination of understanding what a symbol means, what type of meaning has been assigned to it, and then also opening yourself up as a channel for that wisdom to flow through you. This is something I taught in my songwriting classes, where I talked about, as creators, as songwriters, we had to be both the sculptor and the midwife. And I think that Neptune definitely has a midwife quality to it, as does the moon. So we're trying to open ourselves up to receive something rather than potentially actively pursuing it. Whereas like the sculptor takes that mass, takes that universal substance and shapes it into something. So like the sun is our will to shape something. It is that universal knowledge, that aha moment, where Uranus could be that kind of more transcendent aha moment, that very idealized version of saying, I am this versus I am not this. Okay. The sun has the quality of selection. We are selecting who we are, we are selecting an identity. We are aware of something. It bubbles up into our knowing, our gnosis. Now, one interesting thing that's happening on Monday, the 23rd, is that we are seeing the coming of an ANTISCIA between the sun and Saturn. Okay. And I was talking about this in the Planetary Condition report, but this is a point of equal light between the solstice point. So imagine 0 degrees Capricorn and 0 degrees Cancer are solstice points. This is the summer solstice in Cancer. Okay. This is the winter solstice in Capricorn. And on either side, either, whether this is a day or whatnot, we have these positions the ancient astrologers likened to mirror images or shadows. And it's interesting because we talked about the shadow as playing a part in the allegory of the cave. And I think that there might be some relationship with that right now, with the ANTISCIA. Ancient astrologers said that these signs could see each other or behold one another, and that they were of equal power. But it was a secret kind of sympathy between, planets that were in these particular positions. So on Monday the 23rd through Tuesday, we're having this secret sympathy between the Sun and Saturn. So this may be leading, think about when Saturn and the Sun come together. Well, we may be feeling potentially some lack of vitality, some sobriety. This is where we're really coming to terms with time. We're coming to terms with not feeling as vital as we might have in the past. This may be a little bit of depression that sets in when we realize that we're not going to be able to do things that we enjoyed in the past. This may be a little bit of sorrow associated with the type of holiday that we are having to do based on the difficult circumstances of the year. So hang in there on Monday. Um, try not to get too down. See that this is merely a shadow that is bouncing on the wall, and there is a truth behind that shadow. And that truth may be that because of your discipline, because of your ability to delay gratification, you may be buying yourself future time with those people that you care about, rather than risking the fact that you may either get sick yourself or get people that you care about sick by traveling and saying, oh, I'm going to do this anyway. This isn't real, or this isn't something I should pay attention to. That's the shadow. And that truth is that uh, this is a time of discipline. This is a time of restoring balance. This is a time of paying our dues, because a large portion of our society has refused to acknowledge the reality of COVID and wear a mask or social distance, or not, practice some of the basic common sense things that we've been asked to do. This is the reality that we have right now, and this is the Saturnian rebalancing of that excess. And it's not fun, but it is something that is necessary to get us back to the point of being able to have some semblance of normalcy, I guess, or some semblance of shared reality where we can be with one another again. Again, I really highly encourage you to do the responsible thing this week, and through the holiday season. I can't stress that enough. I'm dumbfounded sometimes when I look at the news and I see the numbers continue to rise, and I still see people walking around without a mask, or getting together in large groups, or planning these big holiday parties or things like that. I can't understand it. I can't understand that people are living in such a different reality. It's very difficult to reconcile, and that may be another part of this antiscia that may lead to some feelings of depression, is recognizing the the schism that we have in our realities right now, with many different factions of our society. And that's something that we're going to have to come to terms with and try to reconcile, if we're going to have a shared reality eventually again, which we need to have a functional world. We have to have some sort of shared reality. It doesn't mean that we have to share every single belief, but we have to have enough of a shared reality that we are acting in a way that is not detrimental to one another. And that's something that is really important moving forward, and that we're at a turning point. We're at a crisis point with that particular thing. And that may be something that we're dealing with this eclipse too: truth versus falsehood, um, belief versus questioning belief. I think that that's something we could see at this full moon, because we have a Jupiter ruled sun, which is wanting to confirm and stabilize belief system, and a Mercury ruled moon, which is all about arguing, contesting, uh, casting doubt onto a reality. So this may be the big theme that we're experiencing over the course of the week as well, is what is our shared reality? What do we really believe? Okay, one little side note about Antiscia that I discovered today in my reading. This was on astro.com. I was doing a little bit more research on Antiscia. They have a really good article on there. I believe Tanya Daniels was the author. I could be mistaken, but I think that's what it was. I was confused because I was reading in a couple source texts, Porphyry and Paulus, about Antiscia and about seeing and beholding. And this is something that Demetra George has in her book too. And it wasn't matching up to the traditional or to the modern way of thinking of Antiscia and the signs. It was different signs, and I couldn't quite figure out what they were getting at. And in that article, they explained that in ancient times, there were authors that used 15 degrees of Cancer and 15 degrees of Capricorn as the solstice points. And an author named Firmicus Maternus was one of the first authors to correct to the 0 point to change where our understanding of those Antiscia points would be. So that was a real light bulb moment as far as what they were trying to do with that. So if you come across two different definitions of Antiscia, keep in mind that there was a 15-degree solstice point at Cancer and Capricorn. And my guess is that's because of the thema mundi having a 15-degree Cancer ascendant. I'm not exactly sure why they use that 15 degrees. That's still something that I will have to explore. Okay, let's move forward. Actually, before we move forward, just one little last note. Jupiter, I talked about this in the planetary condition report, but Jupiter is on this fixed star Pavo, which is in the constellation the Peacock. It's very, very close to the south pole of the celestial south pole. And it wasn't introduced until the 16th century, so who knows how much influence it actually has. But see if it plays out, and think of the nature of a peacock, a very showy, ostentatious type of experience. Potentially, this could be connected with hubris, the pride that comes before a fall. And maybe this is the pride or the hubris of thinking that we can do whatever we want and not face consequences. I am nervous for us as a collective right now because of that hubris, because of that wanting to do whatever we want to, regardless of the reality, that the harsh, cold reality, the Saturnian reality that's staring us in the face. So be very careful over the course of the week that you don't fill yourself with pride or hubris or ostentatious behavior, when what is required of us right now is humility, is paring something down, of doing something in a smaller fashion rather than an ostentatious fashion. All right, let's move forward. Sorry for the bummer forecast this week, but it's a tough time right now. And I just want to give you the truth as I see it. And again, everyone's truth is going to be slightly different, but I'm trying to deliver some sort of oracular meaning to these literal events that we're experiencing. And the sky is trying to speak to us right now. The sky is trying to tell us what is required of us to bring things back into balance and back into harmony. And we can feel this, all these events and feel pain because of them and feel sorrow because of them. But we've got a roadmap back to balance. And that roadmap is accepting that we are going to have to do things in a disciplined and mature and potentially in a more humble fashion as we move forward. All right, let's talk about Tuesday. On Tuesday, November the 24th, the moon will be moving from Pisces into Aries at 10:04 a.m., continuing its first quarter phase. We're going to see a sextile from the moon to Saturn at 5:44 a.m. The moon will then move into Aries at 10:04 a.m., and then it will trine the sun at 4:12 p.m. So we have harmony between the lights on Tuesday, the 24th. So we potentially may be feeling a little bit more optimistic, a little bit more, have a little bit more clarity about what we're going to do moving forward. Um, we do have a fixed star conjunction with Mercury this on Tuesday. Mercury is going to conjoin 19 degrees of Scorpio, which is close to the fixed star ZUBEN El-Shamali. And let's go to our star chart and look at that real quick. So here we go on the 24th. Okay. And we can see that we've got now the sun is right in the claws. Okay. It's right in the claws of the scorpion. This is tropical Sagittarius, this area right here. Okay. Between the claws of the scorpion and the tail. We've got Ophiuchus, the snake handler, aka Asclepius, the healer, in this area of the zodiac. Here is the peacock down here where we see Jupiter. There's Jupiter in projected ecliptical degree. Okay. Again, it's very, very south of the ecliptic, so it may have a little bit less of an influence than a fixed star that will be right on the ecliptic or closer, which is what we're experiencing with Zubin El-Shamali. Okay, so here we have Zubin El-Shamali, which is the northern pan. Now, in ancient times, the claws of the scorpion extended all the way out. They were huge. Okay, so this was the northern pan or the northern claw of the scorpion. And this was associated with justice. Okay, the scales of justice. And we had Zubin El-Janubi here, the southern claw, which was down here, or the southern pan. Okay, actually, it's right here. Sorry. This drawing is not my favorite drawing. It should be the pans. The fulcrum should be here and the pans should be down here. But anyway, Zubin al-Janubi was in a more southern latitude. And whenever you have two fixed stars that are related to one another, the northern one is generally more favorable, being north being like ascending, and south being like declining. So we had Zubin el-Janubi, which was about insufficient price, or like a payment that is never enough. It was justice that was harsh. It was like merciless, right? Where Zubin el-Janubi is where I think where we've come back into balance after we understand that we have this lack of balance, and we've in over the process of living, we're bringing things back into balance. So they call this one sufficient price, mild justice, mercy, leniency, a favorable verdict. This is where you've fulfilled your obligations and you've brought things back into balance. With Mercury here, we could be arguing or contesting for equality, for fairness. We could be kind of advocating for some kind of legal reformation, some kind of justice that is bringing things back into balance. Now, I haven't even talked about what's going on in politics. I sort of kind of shut my brain off to a lot of that after the election, because a lot of it's just tomfoolery right now by the Republican Party, grasping at straws, creating conspiracy theories and all of these things, trying to disrupt the results of a legal and fair election. And I hope that we're just going to be able to move forward with all this. And I think for my own mental sanity, I haven't been, following every single detail of the corruption that's been happening with that. So I hope potentially by the 24th, maybe we will start to see balance being restored. Because this week, I'm recording this on Friday. Today is the 20th, and we're experiencing conjunction with Zubin el-Janubi as I'm recording this, and things are going off the rails with Republican, senators meeting with Trump, trying to disrupt, the vote being certified in Michigan and things like this, where things are just out of whack. So I hope by Tuesday, the 24th, we will start to see some balance be restored. All right, let's move forward to Wednesday. And we'll go back to our chart. All right, so let's see. Wednesday, November the 25th, the moon will be in Aries, continuing on This is the last day of that first quarter phase before we move into the waxing gibbous phase on Thanksgiving. Uh, the moon will be conjoined Mars at 6:39 p.m. So we have an applying aspect from the moon to Mars for most of Wednesday. Mercury will be moving into the third decan of Scorpio at 4:17 in the AM. So this particular area of the zodiac, this decan, is of course still hosted by Mars. Um, it is, but the face ruler, the decanic ruler, is Venus uh, in the Chaldean order, and the Moon in the Triplicity system. The tarot card associated with this decan, we've talked about this in shows past, with the new moon that we experienced in the third decan. But this is the Seven of Cups that we've been talking about. This is called Illusionary Success in Book T and Debauchery in the Book of Thoth. Austin Coppock calls it a crow. The fixed stars UNUKALHAI, HADAR, and Tolemon are present in this area of the zodiac. And the daimon, the spirit associated with this face, was called Kairos, or opportunity. So this may be a point where we are uh, thinking about opportunities that have passed. We may be getting a little bit destabilized because of our pursuits of pleasures that are no longer a reality, of chasing the ghosts of the past. This is an area of the zodiac that is kind of associated with, dark, crude, type of, decay. So this may be where our communications take on this like crude sentiments, where we're struggling with some of our darker thought patterns, okay, where we are maybe getting fixed or brooding on the past, where we are upset about these opportunities that we feel have passed us by that we may never be able to get again. This may be the point in time where you're like, oh, I'm really upset because our holiday this year isn't going to be like it was in the past. I'm just making a conjecture here, but just thinking about this on how we may experience this. Um, there may be a time where we're trying to pursue pleasure of the past, and because it is different this year, that we may get upset. And I would encourage you. I would say the risk of this is because of our loneliness, because of our dissatisfaction with the form that has gone in the past. Some real risks are abusing substances. Maybe this is a time where some people are tempted. And this is one theme of this decan is temptation, are tempted to overindulge in things like alcohol, uh, you know, drugs or whatnot. And I would encourage you to try to have balance with things of that nature. And um, the past is the past. No moment is guaranteed. No experience is guaranteed. And this is why mystics have taught us to live in the moment, because we treat every moment like it's sacred. And this moment is sacred as well. And you will help to alleviate your suffering if you understand that this is a new moment. This is not a moment that is based on the past. This is not a moment that is based on history. That's only your experience. That's only in your mind. That is only Mercury trying to deliver you that memory. And that memory may be painful because we are not able to recreate it once again. My advice to you though is this is temporary. This is 1 year potentially out of many that could happen in the future. And we have to learn to have gratitude for what we have now. If you have good health now, embrace that good health. If you have people that love you in your immediate household, embrace those people. If you have enough food to put on your table, embrace that. If you have the means to be able to connect with your loved ones from afar via technology, appreciate that we live in a time where that's even possible. That's incredible. That is incredible that we are able to see. It's incredible that my voice is coming to you and you can see my face through basically just this square. Like, that is incredible. That's a gift. That's something to appreciate and say, oh my goodness, we are living in amazing times. We're living in difficult times, but also in amazing times. And I think that that can give you some solace as we move forward through one of the most transformative and challenging years that we've experienced as human beings, I think, in history. All right. So again, understanding Kairos in Greek mythology was a figure that had a lock of hair on his forehead. No hair on the back, just on the forehead. And the allegory goes, the story helping us to have meaning behind it goes that you can only you can only grasp Kairos from the front at the most opportune moment. Not even Zeus himself can grab Kairos from behind. When an opportunity is passed, not even the most powerful force in the universe, the god himself, Zeus, can bring it back. And I think that that's the way to look at this this week moving ahead. Is there are times where forms are need to return to the earth, and we can mourn them. We can feel our feelings. I don't think that I can alleviate the pain of separation, but our understanding and our gnosis can alleviate suffering by hanging on to the pain. You can choose to feel the pain and then move forward. You can choose to hang on to the past form to experience suffering. That's the path to suffering. This is something I tell my daughter all the time. There's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is not something we can always avoid. Suffering is, I think, a choice. So choose wisely this week. All right, let's move forward to Thursday, the 26th, and Thanksgiving Day here in America. On November the 26th, the moon will be starting off in Aries, moving to Taurus over the course of the day. Most of the day will be spent with an Aries moon. Doesn't dip into Taurus until 10:43 p.m., which is unfortunate because the moon is quite fiery in Aries and not as comfortable. It would have been nice to have a Taurus moon over the course of Thanksgiving, but maybe this is after we've stuffed ourselves full of food and given thanks that we can relax at the end of the day. We move into the waxing gibbous phase on Thursday. Um, it's a difficult day. Thursday is a difficult day, probably one of the more difficult of the week. The moon's going to be squaring Pluto at 8:50 a.m. It is going to be squaring Jupiter at 1:14 p.m. and squaring Saturn at 6:45 p.m. Again, then it moves into Taurus at the very end of the day. We do have an ANTISCIA or a shadow conjunction with Jupiter at 4 degrees of the Sagittarian sun and roughly 25 degrees of the uh, Capricorn Jupiter. Now, the way that you calculate ANTISCIA is you have these signs that are equidistant to the solstice points, and then you have to add the degrees up to 30. Okay, so 4 degrees Sagittarius is exactly the same distance from the winter solstice point as 25 degrees Capricorn is. Okay, so like let's say that we're just looking at the sun. On November the 26th, there is the same amount of light as there would be when the sun moves to 25 degrees Capricorn, which is probably sometime in, late January. All right, mid-January. Okay, so think about that. We've got where the light is decreasing right now, but it will be increasing to the same level of light at that ANTISCIA point. So we may be tempted to overdo it. We may have some hubris, some grandiose thinking, some arrogance. We may also feel optimistic with a shadow sun and Jupiter kind of thing. But with these squares, tempers may flare. Uh, Thanksgiving, any holiday where we're getting together with extended family members, there's always an opportunity for different people that normally aren't thrust together in situations to be put together in a circumstance where they're having to talk to one another. And I've experienced this in the past, as I'm sure most of you have, when extended family, it can be a little rough sledding trying to connect with them in a way that is healthy. And another thing that we have going on Thursday is Mercury is going to be conjoining the fixed star UNUKALHAI, which is at 22 degrees of Scorpio. That's the heart of the serpent. It was associated with violence, with poisons, with Mercury, it's probably with a sharp tongue, with words that sting. So I would caution you, highly caution you, to be very careful about what you express to one another. This may be a time, if you are getting together, whether via, which I hope via virtually and not in person, but I'm sure that some of you out there are still going to do that despite my best warnings and the warnings of the CDC and every other scientific organization that exists on the planet right now. Um, you may get together with people that don't share your beliefs, and we're at a period in history where we're so divided right now on some level, and tempers could flare. And the words have a potential to sting one another at this point. So even if you're getting on a Zoom call with Uncle Joe or Aunt Petunia from Iowa or something like that, that you don't normally see, and maybe somebody holds different political beliefs than you or something, the potential for getting into it with somebody is still there, even if it's virtual. I would encourage you to take the high road. I would encourage you to uh, embrace the other nature of a snake, which is shedding the skin, which is not holding on to those old arguments, those old grievances. Um, Trying to find ways that you can connect with one another. And sometimes that requires not talking about those difficult topics. Um, I don't know if there's ever been an argument that has completely changed somebody's uh, mind at Thanksgiving or Christmas or something like that. I'm probably wrong. Maybe there is. But in general, I think it's a recipe for being uncomfortable. There's a reason why people say don't talk about religion and politics, in familiar company or whatever, because those are things that people disagree on. Now, if you are an enlightened being or something like that, which I don't know, you're not. Sorry, like we all fall short of the glory. I don't know if that I'm definitely not. Like I just am uh, a student of this right now, a student of this divine language. Um, I'm not above any of this, and but I try. I try to, when I get influenced by maybe some of these lower natures, I try to consider the ramifications of an action. I still might get into an argument. I still might express from maybe a more immature vantage point. I'm definitely guilty of that. Um, but that's why that's why we're working on ourselves. That's why we're trying to learn something on this in this incarnation. And if you're listening to my forecasts, I have to think that you're trying to be a better person, that you're trying to uh, reconcile with some of your lower, darker nature, with your shadow side, with your anticia, like, right? You're wrestling with it, and that's okay. That is something that is part of being human. But I would encourage you to try to transcend some of those darker impulses as we get together, because uh, the reality is that um, nothing is guaranteed. We're at a point where over 250,000 Americans have lost their lives to a very deadly disease. And you don't want the last conversation that you have with somebody to be an argument. I think trying to make peace with people as much as you can is important, even if you are very different people. And I think that's really important to keep in mind when you are having interactions with your family or with your extended family or friends, or that, to keep that in mind this year, because um, there could be a situation where you have regret if you say the wrong thing. And you know what? You don't. No one's forcing you to get together with people that don't empower you. I don't even know if that's the right word, or that don't acknowledge your unique personhood. No one's forcing you to do that. That being said, that you don't have to cut people out of your life if they disagree with you on small things. There's a difference between the separation that happens between people who are abusive to one another and folks that just kind of disagree on some things. And only you are going to be the judge of what what that means for you and what is healthy for your own equilibrium. And I won't fault you if there's some people in your life that you're just like, I can't handle right now. I just can't. I can't get into it with them. There's no shame in that. Sometimes we just need a timeout, and sometimes we just need some time to be with ourselves. And maybe that's this year. And a lot of the guilt that we feel is we're just imposing that on ourselves. And try to forgive yourself, I think, is another way that you could experience this holiday. All right. Well, let's move off of that and move forward to Friday. On Friday, November the 27th, moon will be in Taurus. Yay, Taurus. I like the Taurus moon. I have that as a symbol in my natal chart. So Taurus moons are fun. So this may be the day after where we get to relax. We're not stressing out about cooking for anybody or for talking to people that we don't normally talk to. Maybe we just enjoy some leftovers. We are able to, like, you know, be a little bit slothful, I would say. We're continuing the waxing gibbous phase. Now, there are a few things that are going on, though, that may not give us the peace that we're looking for now that I'm looking at it. Oh, boy. The moon conjoins Uranus at 2:10 in the afternoon. Uh, it opposes Venus at 2:24, and it's activating a Venus-Uranus opposition, which happens around noon. Mercury will be making a sextile to Pluto very early in the morning at 23 degrees of Scorpio and Capricorn, respectively. Mercury will also be on the fixed star Hadar, which is that fixed star in the constellation Centaurus, which was Chiron. This was the knee of Chiron. It's also called a Gina, where we're sharing and communicating wisdom. This is about teaching, common sense skills, discussing a difficult past experience or wound potentially. Chiron was the immortal centaur that accidentally was struck by one of Hercules' poisoned arrows and was not able to heal that wound, but also wasn't able to die. So he lives with this, you know, this really difficult wound. Um, so watch out for the wound that gets opened up uh, Thursday and Friday. With Venus opposite Uranus, this is an interesting placement. We have Venus in her exile, Venus in a difficult spot, Venus having difficulty bringing consensus and harmony and things together. Again, we've most of us who have uh, some of that chironic, chironic, if some of that common sense associated with Chiron, most of us will have spent a separate holiday. We won't have been able to get become into union with our loved ones, maybe just in a unique way though. So again, with this opposition, maybe it's just different. Um, if we talk about Uranus as the way that Schmidt does, as a transcendental sun, we can think about it as idealism. So our experience of trying to create unity is in opposition with our idealism on how we think it should be. And that's painful. When we have a real literal experience that doesn't match up with the metaphorical divine experience that we're hoping for, we can feel restless. We can feel the pain of that. That is a real thing. Like that's something where when the reality doesn't match up with the ideal, that's when revolutions happen too. So that's I think that's some of the revolutionary uh, significations of Uranus, is because people realize that the reality that they're living in, the literal reality, isn't matching up with the the dream that they have, and they get upset. So try not to get too upset if the reality of your holiday didn't match up with the idealized version of it. This too shall pass. Um, what else? We've got a sextile with Pluto. So this may be a time where we're really getting to the depth of some issue, having some penetrating insight. This could be a time where we're really researching something, probing research, depth psychology, maybe getting fixated on something mentally too, or obsessed with something. This is a time where you can really get to the bottom or the heart of an issue. Uh, Try not to be too severe with your thoughts. Uh, this could be where you're getting again that sarcasm or that biting communication can come into play, where you're stirring up the compost pit to heat it up a little bit. This could be where you're bringing things up from the past and arguing about it with people, which is never really a great deal. Like save that stuff for your therapist, and if you have a plan to like move forward with the people that you're dealing with, that's fine, but dredging old hurts from the past, if you're not prepared to heal afterwards, can be really damaging. All right, that's Friday the 27th. Let's move forward to Saturday the 28th. On Saturday, November the 28th, we're going to continue the moon uh, in the waxing gibbous phase in Taurus. We're going to have a sextile between the moon and Neptune at 11:28 a.m. And then the moon will trine Pluto at 9:39 p.m. Mercury is going to be making a sextile with Jupiter at 9:51 p.m. And Neptune, our planet of illusion and of transcendence, will be stationing direct at 7:36 p.m. So that's kind of I guess, the big news of the day is Neptune stationing direct. Now, this isn't super uncommon. The outer planets, Neptune, Pluto, and uh, Uranus, spend most of at least half of the year in retrograde motion. You can see Uranus is still retrograde right now. Pluto is direct. But this may be where we are really getting in touch with what is our dream? What are some of the beliefs that we have that are motivating us? Maybe what are some of the illusions that we have, or the mirages, or the oasis things that we are, you know, living under a falsehood? This decan of Pisces that Neptune is moving direct in, or stationing, that's a really important moment. The station is where we may get some really important realizations or oracular kind of speakings. It's called the Net in Austin Coppock's book, and represented by the Nine of Cups. And he talks about this as being associated with dolos, and truth versus falsehood. There's a story in this decan where Prometheus was crafting man out of clay, and he had an assistant named Dolos, which tried to has sort of like a sorcerer's apprentice type of energy, where when the master isn't looking, he tries to craft his own figure of humanity, but ran out of clay and wasn't able to finish the feat. But the story goes is that Prometheus took pity and was so flattered by the attempt that he put both in the kiln, and one became truth and one became falsehood. So think about, what is the reality that you're living in right now? Is it true? Is it reflective of the cosmic idealism, or is it a falsehood? Is it a false ideal that you're following? Is it only motivated by material desires? I think that's the key of discerning real truth and essence versus falsehood. Is a lot of the times we think that our belief systems are motivated by some higher purpose or some higher calling, when they're actually motivated by material security issues. And I think that that's when we run afoul of the divine law, is when we're trying to serve these material desires under the guise of spirituality. And, this has happened throughout the centuries where we have these sacred texts that come down to us, and we have the word representing a spiritual truth, an allegory for truth. And then we have people that are turning them into tropes or some kind of moralistic way of living. And that's open to interpretation. And sometimes we have, for example, we had interpretations of the Bible, like the King James version of the Bible. And one of the questions many historians and theologians have had when they're questioning that work is how much of that work was changed to suit the the king, all right, King James. How much of the wording, how much of the stories were shifted from the original uh, language to create subservience to a king, and to keep people in line and keep people in a system and keep people uh, faithful to the earthly king rather than the divine king. And I don't have a great answer for that, but that's always something I ask myself is religion is something that can definitely be corrupted by human beings. And that is always a danger when we have an interpreter. You know what I'm saying? So if we get back to our hermeneutic, what, a lot of the times the spiritual teachings are not bad. They're not um, detrimental. They're not harmful. But in the translation process, people, insert their own beliefs and their own desires, their own wills based on, their own earthly desire. And then it becomes corrupted. And we've seen that, happening, playing out in our news cycle. And you see it playing out in like, oh, I don't know, like the Westboro Baptist Church, which is just spewing hatred and things like that. Like that's not rooted in spirituality. That's not spirit. That's not love. Um, so be careful of how you are trying to transcend your reality and make sure that it is rooted in an essence of spiritual truth rather than a falsehood. And it's hard to know sometimes. And sometimes you need feedback on that. So those themes might really be coming up as we go over the weekend is what is real and what isn't. We may be really trying to discern what our shared reality is going to be moving forward. And we've had difficulty with that, especially in America and especially with the internet and things like QAnon and conspiracy theories. We've had a real challenge to what is truth and what isn't. And we've shed a lot of, there's been a lot of doubt cast on what our shared reality is. And uh, I don't have a good answer for you other than just, you know, uh, trust your gut. Try not to get sucked into weird stuff that just seems completely outlandish. And ask for feedback sometimes, and not just from whatever echo chamber that you're in. I think that's the date. That's really how we've gotten to this point of division, is we've separated ourselves into these echo chambers of separate realities, and now we aren't listening to anyone else that isn't a part of that, that doesn't affirm that particular chosen worldview. That's dangerous. That's when we lose any semblance of objectivity. All right. So just to finish up with the Mercury Jupiter sextile, that may be a time where we're questioning beliefs, where we're contesting Mercury, belief, Jupiter. All right, where we're really kind of saying, what do we really believe? Maybe we're diminishing the importance of some sort of larger truth as well. We could think about we could think about I guess in Ren Butler's book, he talks about exaggeration, possible arrogant speech. But I think with Mercury in the overcoming position, in the superior position, we may be trying to diminish someone else's truth potentially through Mercury trying to divide it up, make it small, contest it, argue against it. So be careful if you get into arguments and you're trying to belittle someone else's belief system, because that might be that this Mercury thing, and you may be being guided by your own illusion. So I guess I would check yourself before you wreck yourself on this particular day. All right, let's finish up the forecast. Thanks for sticking with me. It's probably a long one again. Uh, the sun, let's see. Sorry. Hold on a second. On November the 29th, which is Sunday, the moon moves from Taurus into Gemini at 11:16 a.m., continuing our waxing gibbous phase. This is the last day before our eclipse. We will have the moon trine Jupiter at 2:53 a.m. at 25 degrees of Taurus and Capricorn. That is very close to the fixed star Algol. So we have an Algol moon on Sunday. The moon will oppose Mercury at 26, right on that fixed star Algol, opposing Mercury in Scorpio at 3:33 a.m. So this may be a little bit more about Saturday's forecast, but be real careful that you don't lose your head, so to speak, in any conversations that you have. It can be really easy to just go off the rails and say things that you don't mean in a fit of pique. So here's your pre-argument warning that it's okay to take a time out and just really consider your words before you say them. The moon will trine Saturn at 7:48 a.m. and then move into Gemini at 11:16 p.m. Now we do have a decan shift. Venus will be moving into the second decan of Scorpio at about 10 o'clock in the morning. This particular decan is ruled by the Sun and Jupiter. It is, of course, still hosted by Mars and all of Scorpio, right? But we have a different kind of like face ruler. The tarot card associated with this decan is the Six of Cups, which many tarot enthusiasts associate with nostalgia, memories. Let's see. Here it is here. We see two children, one giving a cup to another. It's kind of like associated with memory in the past. Austin Coppock calls it mutual distillation. Book T and Book Toth calls it pleasure. We've got a number of those fixed stars in this decan, Acrux, Alphecca, and the two Zubens, El Janubi and El Shamali. The daimon associated with the second decan of Scorpio is Leto, who is the mother of both Apollo and Artemis, the sun and the moon, respectively. So we may have a deep desire for intimacy, for emotional intimacy. We may be mourning the loss of that intimacy due to the not being able to manifest things the same way we were in the past. There is a danger of getting entangled in relationships that are based on the pursuit of pleasure that is a memory of the past. We may have a need to cleanse ourselves and let go of old habits, let go of old hungers or old desires. We may experience a catharsis or a release of deeply held emotions through processing or distilling our memories. This is the kind of energy where you are, if we're thinking about another allegory, turning water into wine, right? This is or turning grapes into wine. This doesn't even have to be water. This could be like where we are taking the grapes of the past, crushing them down, and figuring out what we're going to save from that process. What did we learn from the past? What have we learned from our relationships? What have we learned from opportunities that are no longer manifesting in the world of form? What do we need to release in our relationships to move forward to a rebirth? And, this is the thing, Semisonic said it best. Closing time, every new beginning. Was closing time. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end, right? So embrace the endings. It's a liberation. I love that word when I think of the malefics now. The liberation of malefic influences, the liberation of Mars, the liberation of Saturn. Being able to separate from stuff that doesn't serve us anymore. Being able to figure out what the essence is of our experience and what we've learned from it. That's where the wisdom comes in, and that's where your wisdom process hopefully is going to serve you well, is by understanding your past, not getting fixated or lost in it, taking with you the experience and the lesson, and then letting the rest of it go. Because that wisdom is going to inform the new start that you're going to make in whatever is bringing you vitality moving forward. Okay. So that's what I've got for this week. Looking ahead to next week, the 30th through the 6th. On Monday, the 30th, we've got our full moon lunar eclipse at 8 degrees of Gemini and 8 degrees of Sagittarius. So the moon will be at 8 Gemini. Big changes. This is where we really are going to be dealing with truth versus falsehood. And what do we really believe? And what are the skills necessary to bring our dreams into reality? We're going to see a sextile between Mercury and Saturn on Monday as well. On the 1st, Mercury moves into its exile into Sagittarius. So we'll discuss that. We got some fixed star placements where Venus will be conjoining Acrux and Alpheca at 12 Scorpio on Tuesday the 1st. The sun will be conjoining the fixed star Antares at 10 degrees of Sagittarius. That'll be interesting to break down. That's one of the royal fixed stars. So a big day with that. And we're going to be changing decans with the sun. And towards the end of the week, Venus will be moving into a trine relationship to Neptune. So we'll be starting to get some more clarity on what the dream is and how we're going to transcend the reality and move forward to our new chosen endeavors. So I hope that you're all doing well out there. I feel your pain as far as the family get-togethers go. Some of you may be celebrating. You're like, I didn't like getting together with the extended family anyway, and so be it. You've gotten a reprieve for a year, I guess. So someone's reality and someone's hardship and pain is someone else's celebration, and that's often how it works in the world. But hang in there if you are feeling some difficult emotions this week when it comes to the holidays. The holidays are always something where we think about things in the past and how things should be versus the reality of them. Just remember that what you're experiencing is not necessarily the truth. It is based on the past memory, and try to be present as much as you can. If you are enjoying these forecasts, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're on, YouTube, and the Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud. That really helps the algorithm and my videos appear for other people. If you want to support the work that I'm doing here monetarily, I do have a few donation links, including a Venmo at Spencer Michaud and a PayPal Me link. Of course, the best way that you can support my work is to reach out for a reading. If you need some guidance through the holiday season, reach out, and I will help you work through it and the types of things that you may be experiencing. So I hope that helps everyone, and I hope that you have a good Thanksgiving and find things that you can have gratitude for despite the challenging circumstances. Take care, everyone. Peace.